You deal with customers on the end brand side and the BPO side on a daily basis. What is the common issue that you see with BPO organizations related to their hiring practices today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. And I think there's actually two I would probably highlight. One is when we think about the BPO itself, right, is a lot of times there's a challenge or an issue around how they view themselves on this kind of, think of this maturity curve, right? This talent selection maturity curve. Are they a novice, right? They don't even use like interviews really, or are they an expert where they have a really well deployed assessment strategy connected to data and outcomes, and then you have this curve that kind of goes in between. And so a lot of times the goals or the outcomes that BPO is trying to solve for, they're misaligned with where they are on that curve, right? They haven't invested in the data structure to be able to actually look at data and connect that back to their hiring processes, or they haven't really thought about the change management. I mean, one of the things we see a lot of is when you bring assessments or talent selection into the BPO world, and all of a sudden on the recruiting team, the talent acquisition team has this bright, shiny flashlight right on their processes, and now you have measurement, and that creates a dynamic that becomes hard. Like they might not get the adoption they run around the tools, or they'll bypass the tools because they think that well, they've been doing this for 15 years, they know what a good hire looks like, right? And so you have that element there. And I think that the other one that we see is this, and this kind of goes back to the title, right? This tug of war, right? Which is the balance of the BPO's internal needs. So let's say drive retention, right? Turnover costs BPO's a ton of money. So from a hiring perspective, they want to try to figure out how do I retain more people versus what is their end customer trying to drive for, which might be KPIs, right? In the sense of, so you have this mismatch. I can think of one example. A couple of years ago, we had launched a project with a major brand in the technology space that took us to 20 of their outsourcers, right? So they actually paid for this assessment solution to support their programs. And they measured everything based on training scores. And after about 6 to 9 months, the BPOs were coming, saying, look, it's all about retention, right? We the training stuff is interesting, but we're getting, we need to focus on how do we drive retention. And that created this whole, back to this change management conversation around how do we balance everybody's needs there. That's that tug of war, I think, that you alluded to in the title.